So Johnson & Johnson, you know the name, just dropped a massive earnings report. And believe me, this isn't just a bunch of dry numbers. They're actually calling this their Catapult year. So what does that even mean? We're going to dig into what's behind this so-called launch and see if it's really going to rocket them into a new era.
And that Catapult thing, that's not just some marketing buzzword. It comes straight from the CEO, Joaquin Duato. He's basically saying 2025 was the launch pad for a whole new J&J. Now you got to ask, right? Is that just a CEO being a cheerleader? Or is there some real power behind that statement? Well, let's check out the numbers.
Okay, first things first, let's talk about the bottom line. J&J beat what Wall Street expected for their earnings per share, or EPS. Now, I know what you're thinking, 3 cents. That doesn't sound like much, right? But for a company this massive, beating the experts even by a little bit is a huge deal. It tells you their engine is running really smoothly.
And it wasn't just on earnings. They also blew past revenue expectations by, get this, $427 million. So when you put those two numbers together, the picture is pretty clear. J&J is firing on all cylinders. That Catapult they're talking about? Yeah, it's definitely got some serious thrust.
So here's the game plan for our breakdown. We'll start with the Catapult year in review. Then we'll get into their two powerhouses, medicine and medtech. After that, we'll look at the challenges, or headwinds, they're up against. And we'll wrap up by looking at their next big goal, the $100 billion horizon.
All right, let's kick things off with a look back at this so-called Catapult year. What exactly made 2025 such a big deal for J&J? Just look at this number. The sheer scale is, well, it's kind of mind-boggling. We're talking 94.2 times billion dollars in sales for the year. That's the kind of massive financial foundation you need if you're going to talk about a catapult. This is the raw power they're using to launch themselves forward.
Okay, let's dive into the first of their two big engines, the medicine powerhouse. This is where J&J creates those blockbuster drugs you hear about, and honestly, it's the heart and soul of the company. You can see here the division grew by a solid 5.3%, and that's impressive on its own. But what's really incredible is that this growth pushed their sales past $60 billion for the very first time. I mean, think about that. That's not just growth. That's steady, strong growth on an already enormous base. But if you look inside that medicine powerhouse, there is one absolute superstar, oncology. Their cancer treatments division grew by a jaw-dropping 21% in 2025. This is like the afterburner on their jet engine. And J&J knows it. They're projecting this part of the business will be pulling in over $50 billion a year by 2030. Just incredible.
And the king of that oncology kingdom? It's a drug called DARZALEX. This one drug, which treats multiple myeloma, brought in around $14 billion. But here's the crazy part. It's still growing by 22%. A drug that big, still growing that fast? It's practically unheard of. It's truly a cornerstone of the whole company.
So having big winners now is great. But what about the future? Well, that's where the pipeline comes in. Take a look at Tremfya. It's an immunology drug that just crossed the $5 billion mark. And J&J is already saying, hey, we think this is our next $10 billion drug. That shows you their innovation engine is still humming along, creating the blockbusters of tomorrow.
All right, let's switch gears to J&J's other massive growth engine, MedTech. We're talking surgical robots, high-tech medical devices, all the stuff that's literally changing the face of healthcare.
And what's really interesting here is how balanced their growth is. MedTech grew by 5.4%, which is almost exactly the same as the medicine division's 5.3%. This tells you J&J isn't just a drug company anymore. They have two powerful parallel engines driving them forward.
And this is no small operation. MedTech brought in almost $34 billion in sales. Let me put that in perspective for you. The MedTech division, by itself, is bigger than a whole lot of companies on the Fortune 500 list. That's how big we're talking.
So how are they doing it? Well, it really comes down to a few key things. They're making smart acquisitions, buying companies like Abiomed and Shockwave to get stronger in heart tech. They're also winning with their own new products, like a new treatment for heart rhythm issues called VeriPulse. And maybe most importantly, they are going all in on the future with things like robotic surgery systems. They're buying innovation and they're building it themselves.
Okay, so things are looking pretty good, right? Well, it's not a completely smooth ride. Every success story has its challenges. So let's talk about the major headwinds J&J is flying into right now.
And there are two big ones. First up is the patent cliff. You've probably heard of this. Their huge drug Stelara is losing its patent, and that means cheaper generic-style competition. In fact, sales dropped almost 50% in just the last quarter. That is a massive hole to fill. And then there are the legal battles. The ongoing talc lawsuits are costing them a fortune. We're talking about $900 million in legal costs just this quarter. So yeah, these are some serious storm clouds.
So given those pretty big challenges, where does J&J go from here? That brings us to our last section, what they're calling the $100 billion horizon. This is basically the company's official forecast, and honestly, it's a huge statement of confidence. Even with those headwinds we just talked about, they're still guiding for almost 7% growth in both sales and earnings for 2026. They're basically telling the world, yeah, we've got challenges, but our growth engines are stronger.
And that growth gets them to a really symbolic number. Their forecast puts them at $105 billion in sales. Crossing that $100 billion line, that's a massive milestone for any company on the planet. For this newer, more focused J&J, it's basically the ultimate proof that their Catapult strategy is working.
So, when you boil it all down, the whole story of Johnson & Johnson right now is really about one core question. It's a high-stakes race. You've got this powerful innovation engine on one side, and on the other, you've got these serious legal and competitive headwinds. So the question is, can the engine outrun the storm? How they answer that is going to define the next chapter for this healthcare giant.